We're going to be talking about the Electoral College. Can someone raise your hand and tell me, what the heck do you think of when you think of the Electoral College? What am I talking about? What do you think, Tony?
The people who are responsible for electing the president.
Yeah, so if we're talking broadly about the Electoral College is the way we elect a president in the U.S. In its most basic, simplest definition, it's the way we elect a president in the United States, okay? The way we elect the president in the United States. Now, I think I told you this yesterday. Stop me if I did. Did I tell you about what the Founding Fathers would have thought of us electing people? Okay, good. Originally, the Founding Fathers of our country, the people that were at the Constitutional Convention writing up the Constitution, they would be rolling in their graves if they knew that we let any person over the age of 18 elect a president. They would be just dumbfounded that we let stupid people elect such important positions. They were not in support of having everyone across the United States over 18 elect our represented officials, and especially not to elect a president. Do you follow me on this one? Now, in some regards, I understand their thinking. Do you want some person that knows absolutely nothing about government to be able to elect such an important, powerful position? Maybe, maybe not. However, there's also the other argument. Do you want to limit someone from voting that meets the requirements that we've set up to vote? How are you going to limit someone from voting? Are you going to give them an IQ test? Well, we already know people just don't test well on standardized tests. Just because someone isn't government, I know a lot of people that aren't real book smart but know a lot about politics or street smarts. Do you all know people that are street smart but don't really test well? Like, you're going to limit them. Who do you limit? What if there's a language barrier? Everything there is, but might be able to pass a written test, or, something complicated. In general, from the time of our Constitution to now, we have gone in a direction in which more have been vote. If we're talking about age, the age requirement has dropped. In the Vietnam War era, it was 21. It's only been about 40 years that we have had 18-year-olds voting. As far as who can vote, ladies, you were not able to vote up until 1920. You've only had about 90 years of voting eligibility, which is kind of crazy to think about. We're talking about the 1780s, 1790s. You're still 200 years away from being able, 200 plus years away from being able to vote at this point. That seems crazy to me, right? So that's the dilemma. The Electoral College was originally the way in which we selected a president, and it did not involve citizens of the United States, the general public, voting for president. It was not the general public. It was a different process. You follow so far? Any questions so far? Yeah.
What do you say in the first sentence?
The way we elect the president.
The we elect. Oh, man. Oh, jeez. It's one of those types of days, by the way. Thank you for stopping me. The way we elect a president of the United States. Sorry. So, let me pull this a little closer. So, the Electoral College is the way in which we elect a president. I want to talk about originally what the Constitution says, right? When we're talking about the Electoral College, when we say we elect, the people that actually elect the president are called electors. The people that actually elect a president are called electors. That makes sense, right? It shouldn't be too confusing. Electors are the people actually vote like really boggled people's minds in 6th hour, is that technically when we all go to vote for president, right, in 2016 many of us will be able to vote, our votes don't actually count for anything. But electors, okay? Have you, I want to pull something up on here real quick on this TV. I want to pull something up over here real quick. So turning on. Okay. Have you seen one of these maps before? Let's say yes before you've even seen it. Yeah.
So like when our parents vote, they technically, the votes don't count or anything?
Technically, but they do. Technically, no. But in reality, they do. I'll explain what I mean. That's confusing, I know. Have you seen one of these electoral maps before? Right? So Michigan has 16 electoral votes. Right? Texas, 38 electoral votes. Florida has, how many does Florida have? 29 electoral votes. Each state has different amounts of electoral votes. Do you know what decides if you get more or less? Yeah, it's how many people you have living in your state. Generally, the more people you have living in your state, the more electoral votes you get. And I want to show you how this equation starts off. Yes?
Is the number of representatives plus?
We'll get there. We'll get there. I don't want to get people too far ahead. What I'd like to do is start by having you get out your books and go to the Constitution. I want to read what the Constitution actually says. When the Constitution was written, I want you to see what the people, that the states, governments that were reading this had to say. So go to Section 2, which I think is on page 180. I think it's on 180. Is that Section 2? Article 2? Article 2, Section 1?
Yeah.
Okay. So on page 180, this is starting Article 2 where they set up the president. Can someone read Part 1? Go ahead, Katie, go ahead. So Section 1, Part 1.
The executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the vice president chosen for the same term, be elected as follows.
So how long's the term?
4.
Okay, so presidents are elected. So this whole talk today, by the way, this whole talk we're about to have is about this electoral college thing only deals with the national level executive. This is only for presidents. It's not. If the president serve president, you can serve 4-year terms. Okay? So good. Thank you, Katie. Someone else want to read Part 2? All right, go ahead, Addie. So I'm going to stop you in just a second. So be careful because I'm going to stop you. So Part 2 is going to talk about how a president is elected. So go ahead.
Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislator thereof may direct.
Okay, so I want to stop. So now it says, each state may appoint, comma, what level of government are we talking about right now? What level? State. So now they're saying, okay, we're talking about the president, but they say each state may appoint in where? Which branch? The legislature. So we're talking here. So they're going, hopefully, they're going to relate the state legislative branch to how you elect a president. You follow? Okay. So now, Addie's going to continue reading. I want you to read with me on this one. So, the state legislatures thereof may direct, go ahead.
A number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in Congress.
Stop. So, how many electors does each state get? So here's the formula. Electors for each state, or the number of electors for each state equals, what's it say? It may be equal to what, Addie?
Equal to the number of senators
Yeah. The number of senators plus the number of representatives that each state gets in Congress. So, go ahead and copy that down. I want this to be up a little bit so I can see. Okay. Now, if I'm looking at the state of Texas, see how Texas has 38 electors. So the number of Texas's electors equals 38. How many senators does each state get? By the way, I sound like I'm going through puberty. Like, how many senators? I can't even I can't do it. How many does each state get? 2. Right? So how many representatives must Texas have? 36. You're catching on. So Texas has 2 senators. How many senators does Michigan have? 2. How many senators does Hawaii have?
2.
How many senators does Wyoming have? 2. Everyone gets 2. Okay. So in Texas, they have 2 senators, plus they have 36 representatives. That's how they get their 38. In Michigan, what else we have? 14. See how that works? 14 plus 2 is the 16, yeah.
The ones where they have 3, do they only have 1 representative?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? So a state like Montana, North Dakota, South not Nebraska. They have, even though they're big states, they have such small populations, they only have 1 representative and 2 senators. Isn't that interesting?
So the minimum is 3.
Minimum is 3. The very minimum is 3. The minimum you can have is 3. So, now, these electors, right, are the ones that cast the official votes for president. Now, I said that when all of us or our parents or when I go to vote for president in 2016, that my vote won't necessarily count. Technically, it's not my vote that counts, it's these official electors' votes that count. However, they take a pledge to vote how the population of each state tells them to vote. So if Michigan in 2012, more people in Michigan voted for which candidate? Obama, right? So the electors from Michigan cast their 16 votes for Obama. If more people had voted for Romney in 2012, the 16 electors from Michigan would have cast their votes for Romney.
So they get to see them. They get to see our votes.
The electors get to see, and they must see how the state votes, and then they're supposed to vote for how that happens.
Like all 16 of them have to agree to vote?
They don't have to, but they're supposed to. And it almost 99.99999% of the time, they do exactly as they're supposed to do. There has been a couple cases where they don't, but for the most part, they do. Question?
So even if they don't want to vote for that person, they have to?
I'm going to show you and demonstrate to you that they do want to vote for that person, and I'll tell you why, but hold on to that thought. But it's a good question. They will want to, and I'll explain. Yeah. Do you have a question, Tim, or no? Okay, so any questions at this point? You follow so far? Yeah.
Do they get in trouble if they don't vote?
So if they vote opposite?
Yes.
They cannot go to jail, but you can best believe they've lost their ability to be involved in politics for the remainder of their lives. No one would ever trust them again. And the beauty of it is, electors can be anyone. I could be an elector. I wouldn't be to have, like, you know, a long history in politics, and I'll show you. I'll tell you how it's decided. But anyone, there's no like qualifications. Like I don't have to be so old, or you know, you don't have to have certain things. But people could be chosen as electors. So originally, now I'm going to go back to the original, so you don't have to know this, but I want to show you where these electors originally came from. Originally, our founding fathers did not trust us to make good judgments, the people to make good judgments. So here, so let's go back to Article 2, Section 2. So it says the number of representatives and senators to which the state may be entitled to Congress.
But no senator or representative, or person holding an office of trust or profit of the United States, shall be appointed and elected.
So they're saying that basically no one that is a senator or a representative can be both a representative and an elector. Okay? Here's what they did originally. They said state legislative branches could choose electors. They choose electors. These are, so the state of Michigan originally would have chosen electors, and those electors vote, and they voted for the president. Originally, the people had no say in the voting for president. It was the electors that were chosen by the state government. It was not people voting. Because the Founding Fathers did not think the mass of the citizens could be smart enough to make such a decision. You follow? You dig? All right. However, we've gone in a direction in which we've trusted people more and more to make that decision. People now vote, and it's not the state legislatures that choose the electors. Today, where do these electors come from? So today the question becomes, where do electors come from? Or how are they chosen? Today, that decision is not made by state governments. It's actually made by political parties. So there are two major political parties in the United States, right? They're the blue and red colors. Red is usually symbolizing what political party? Republican, right? So electors, right? So you have Republican electors, and Democratic electors. Democrats and Republicans. I probably should put Republican. In Michigan, how many electors do we have? Right? The Democrats choose 16 in Michigan, and the Republicans choose they choose the electors. Now, you better believe that these 16 Republican electors are diehard Republicans. There is no way that if they get to cast their official vote that they're voting for Obama. Does that make sense? The Democrats, by the way, they pick people that are very faithful to the Democratic Party. So if they get to cast their official vote, they're casting it for President Obama. So then, in Michigan, all of the people, the mass of the people, the citizens, vote. More people voted for Obama. So guess whose electors get to cast their official vote? And that's how a president gets votes. Not necessarily from citizens, but the citizens vote, and then whoever's political party wins that state, those electors get to cast their vote. So in Michigan in 2012, the Republican electors did not get to cast a single vote. Yes, Addie. You could try and figure that out over the course. The question is, am I Republican or Democrat? I would love for you to try and figure that out over the course of the year. You're going to find that I can argue both sides equally as well. So if you can figure it out, props for you. And it's not always a clear-cut answer. I tend to vote how I feel about the candidates individually, less about like, I'm diehard this or diehard that. I'm only going to vote one way or another. That I'll give you that much. Yeah. No, I didn't choose. There's no like subtle messages here. Oh, I'm in baby blue today, so I should have worn a red tie, and then I would have really been ambiguous, you know. Yeah, question.
So since whichever party wins has to vote for that party, we kind of actually do vote because they don't have a choice really.
All right, so Tony's saying so basically we do matter because whichever political party wins, whichever candidate wins, the electors have to vote for that. The reality is, these electors, they can vote however they want. However they want. But 99.99999% of the time, they always vote for who they're supposed to vote for and who they tell you they're going to vote for. Does that make sense? So the only time, this, by the way, if an elector, they call him a faithless elector. A faithless elector, an elector that does not vote how they say they're going to, it's not so much that backstab their party. It's not like, ha ha ha, Republicans, I got you, I'm voting Democrat, or like opposite. It's not like that. What it almost always is, if it happens, and I'm telling you, I can only think of, like, I think there's only like 2 or 3 ever happened in our country, and it's never affected the outcome of an election. It's almost always because the candidate that they pledged to vote for did something, got caught up in some scandal, or was immoral in some way, and they abstained from voting, meaning they refused to cast their official vote. Like, I can't in good faith vote for this person, so I'm going to go ahead and not vote for anyone. So instead of 16 Democratic votes, you might get or one case in history where an elector doesn't vote for.
So there's never, there's only.
It's the only other thing, there's one other time that I can think of, and I can't even tell you the specific election, but there's one other time which I believe an elector, there were 2 Republicans running in the state, and instead of voting for the Republican that the majority of the citizens voted for, they voted for a second other Republican because they more agreed with that one. That is lame. So, but for the most part, that never happens. It like almost never happens. Yeah.
Has like the elector votes ever, has like the population ever voted
One way?
for one way and then the electors voted another way? Like a person would have won by population but not by.
Yes. So the question is, have we ever had a situation in which Americans voted and more Americans voted for one candidate, but somehow another candidate got more electoral votes than one? Yes. In the year 2000.
Yeah, it was like really.
We're going to talk about the year 2000. Hold that. I'm going to save that till the end, and we'll talk about it. Yeah.
So theoretically, you could be like Democrat, but be like, oh, I'm such a diehard Republican, and then be like, ha ha ha.
You could, but trust me, it doesn't happen. You would have to be like a mastermind of deception.
So long.
Why are you so betrayal?
Because they're not going to just vote after like one day of you.
Yeah, exactly. You have to prove you're like it's not going to happen. They do their background.
Initiation way.
Yeah, sort of. I don't want to call it that, but yeah, sort of.
Are the electors allowed to vote in like the general election?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know that. My guess is probably not. The question is, are electors allowed to vote as citizens in the regular election? Or do they only cast their official vote? I don't know that for a fact. I think no, but I could be wrong. That's just my gut response, and we'd have to look it up. Yeah.
How long do electors serve for?
I think that electors are chosen every presidential election. New electors are chosen. I think you can be an elector or chosen as an elector multiple times.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the number of electors for each state changes election to election. So look at Michigan. I'll give you a perfect example. 2008. See, because people are moving out of Michigan.
Why is Nebraska all like?
Don't worry about it. We're going to talk about that in a second. Don't worry. Don't worry about it. Okay, so. You get it so far? So the electors are the president actually win. Now, how many total electors are in the whole entire thing? There are, the total number of electors is electors.
Did they put a cap on that one?
Oh, because it's 4.
Well, yeah, I'm going to tell you how. Oh, it's close. You're there. You're almost there. Hold on. Watch. There's 538. To become president, you need to win more than 50%. So 50% of 538 would be 269, right? So you need one more than 269, which means in order to become president, you need 270 electoral votes. Does that make sense? You follow? 270 electoral votes. Now, where do these 538 come from? Watch this. We said in each state the number of electors is the number of representatives plus the number of senators. How many senators total do we have? So how many senators total?
100.
So we have 100 total senators. How many total representatives do we have? We have 435 total representatives, which equals 535. Does anyone know where the extra 3 come from? 3 is the minimum. Where do those 3 come from?
Washington, D.C.
It's the District of Columbia. It's not a state, but they give them 3 votes. Because if you live in Washington, D.C., you want to have a say in the election. So plus 3 from D.C., that's a good way to remember it, plus 3 from D.C. equals the 538. And that's where we get the total number of electoral votes. It's set there. Yeah, it's set there. And it did grow. So if I go back, by the way, if we're looking at this map, and that's a good question, Katie, if I go back all the way to, let's go back all the way into the first election ever, George Washington, there was only 69 electoral votes total. Look at this. So like you can see it's growing. There's more here. 122 plus 47 plus 6, we're at like we're at 175 electoral votes by 1808. Yes. It's the total number of relatives. So, national government, this is called Congress. Congress is made up of the Senate and the House of, House and 435 House of Representatives. Okay, that makes sense? Yeah. Now, here's the tricky, crazy part. It is possible and the popular vote is how many citizens actually vote. Another crazy thing, by the way, before I go into that scenario, another crazy thing is when, you know how like the night of an election or the next day, news agencies report who wins? Obama wins! Technically, the electors haven't even cast their votes yet. They're assuming that they're going to cast their votes how they should cast their votes. And it's never influenced the results of elections, so they're pretty safe in doing so. Yeah?
Hasn't there ever been a time where they made you name a state?
The electors?
You know, the people on the news, like, oh, this guy, yeah.
Florida or something.
Well, it's not for Florida. There was. I'll give you an example. In the election during World War I, President Woodrow Wilson was president. And so we're going to go all the way back to 1918's election. 1916. No, 1920 election. No, not that. I lied. 1916. 1916's election. You see how all those red states are on the right side of the map? What happened was during this election, see how Woodrow Wilson won all the western states? People went to bed, and the only votes that had been counted were from here over in this time zone. And there were newspapers that were reporting Woodrow Wilson lost because all of those states went to the Republican, Charles Hughes. And what happened is there were actually newspapers that reported Woodrow Wilson had lost because they were assuming they were going to be right. And they didn't. Woodrow Wilson wound up sweeping all of the other states out that way, and he wound up winning. Huh?
Except for Oregon.
Well, yeah, except for Oregon.
Well,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, there has been times where it looks one way, but then it not quite. So, watch this. In 2000, this is one of the crazier elections ever to happen in U.S. history. This is top 3 or 4 craziest elections ever in U.S. history. It was Al Gore versus George W. Bush. Do you see how many electoral votes Bush got? 271. He really squeaked over that 270. Al Gore got 266. Who won the popular vote? Al Gore won the popular vote. Al Gore had 50,997,000 votes. 50,100,000. I want to show you how this can happen. By the way, it all came down to one state. Does anyone know what state it was? It was Florida. Florida had millions of votes cast total, and it was 100 votes. Recount, and it was a whole ordeal. It was a huge media, let me show this happen. I think I'll show you all day. In 2000, let's say 2000, by the way, does anyone know what state George W. Bush was from? He was from Texas. He was from Texas. So you'd hope he won his home state. Although, by the way, I think it's ironic, Al Gore lost his home state in this election. If he would have just won his home state, he would have won. But he lost it. That's like a bad omen. So, okay, Texas. So we have George W. Bush. I'm just going to put him in there as GWB. You good with that? Yeah. And Al Gore, AG. Right? And let's do a couple states. And I'm going to show you how you can win the electoral vote and lose the popular vote. So let's say that George W. Bush wins in a landslide. Now, let's see. How do I want to do this? I gotta make sure I do this right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's say that George W. Bush wins Texas. Okay? So we're talking Texas right now. Okay? George W. Bush wins Texas. And Al Gore is going to win Michigan. So Michigan's going to go to Al Gore. George W. Bush is going to win Texas. George W. Bush, let's say there's 10 million votes in Texas. I'm making that number up, but do you follow me so far? 10 million people are voting in Texas. If George W. Bush gets 5,000,001 vote, and Al Gore gets 4,999,999 votes in Texas, who wins the state of Texas? Bush. How many electoral votes does he get?
32.
So now he's got 32 electoral votes. How many does Gore get for being one vote off? 0. Right? And he wins in a landslide in Michigan. Just crushes it in Michigan, let's say. And let's say Michigan has 5 million voters. I'm making that number up, but 5 million. Al Gore gets 4,500,000 votes in Michigan. And they hate him in Michigan, and he only gets 500,000 votes in Michigan. Who gets Michigan's electoral votes? Gore. So how many electoral votes would he get in this election? So now he's got 18, right? Winning the 18. Let's totals. Total votes cast. George W. Bush now has 5,500,001 vote total. 1,499,000 votes. Who's winning the popular vote?
Al Gore.
Al Gore. In 2 different states, Al Gore's winning by over 4 million votes. But who's winning the electoral race? Bush. See how that happens? It's a little weird, but if you lose a state by a very little amount, you can be really close in the popular vote, but you get it's a landslide in electoral votes. Just because every state goes for one person all or nothing. Except for 2 states. 2 states don't go all or nothing. That's a purple one. So I want to show you one more example.
It was on a different map.
I know. This one, 2008, Barack Obama, John McCain, Senator John McCain. There are 2 states in our country which have decided they don't think all or nothing is fair. Because the way we set it right now, if you win by 1 vote, all of the electors of that political party get to cast all the electoral votes for their candidate. Nebraska has said, if 60% of the people vote for President Obama and 40% of the people vote for John McCain, then 60% of our electoral votes, or the electors for Obama, should cast their vote, and 40% of the electors, or the electoral votes, for McCain should get to cast their vote. Does that make sense? And so in this election, I believe it was flip-flopped. So I believe McCain got 3 electoral votes from Nebraska, and Obama got 2 electoral votes from Nebraska. They divide them up. Now, is that a more accurate or less accurate reflection of how the citizens are voting? See how it's more accurate?
Why don't they use that?
Every state has its own decision on whether they want to go all or nothing or divide it up. And so far, only 2 states, Nebraska and Maine, are the only 2 states that divide them up. That's just the way it is. It's they're all. Maine would be the one, but in this one, so many people voted for President Obama.
Like the states with more electoral vote.
So, do you see why there's an incentive to campaign in states that have a lot of electoral votes? They mean more. They're more. Let's go to 12. Republican. Pre-election. If you're a Democrat, is there much point in spending a lot of time in Texas? So if you're a Democrat living in Texas, you're not seeing presidential candidates that are Democrats a whole heck of a lot. Same could be said with a place like California. How's California voted in those times? Not a lot of Republican candidates spend a ton of time in California. They know it's...
Is Michigan like Democratic a lot too?
Michigan is a very in-between state. Michigan has gone... It's been Democratic in recent years, but it switches traditionally. It's gone back and forth. That's a third political party.
I wish we had voted for the last election.
No. Actually, the yellow. If you want to be really, you want me to be really blunt about it, those are it's racist people in the South that were trying to. They're fighting civil rights movements down there. Is what they're trying to do. It's 1968. Like, this is Martin Luther King's marching on Washington, and people are reacting to it, and that's why you have a third political party rise up. Yeah.
What do they call them?
The super racist party. No, that's not what they called it. But no, I think it was. Yeah, I think it's the American Independent Party, and it's basically a states' rights type of deal. If we want to segregate schools, we can segregate schools. Is what they're saying. Yeah.
Why didn't the guy with the boot on his head?
Oh, I don't want to talk about it.
Wanted to give everyone ponies. Why did he not become president?
Wait, who is that?
I don't remember his name, but he had like just a boot on his head.
Publicity stunt. Publicity stunt. So it is. So I just want you guys to know, yes, it's important for people to vote, and your vote does matter. But technically, it's the Electoral College or the electors that are chosen by the political parties that cast the official vote. And when they cast their vote, by the way, it's an actual piece of paper. They write down their official ballot, they fold it up, and they mail it to Washington, D.C., and those electors' votes are what's counted. Yes?
So, like, say you're writing it down, like, I do this all the time when I'm trying to write something down that I'm thinking of something, and I write it down, the thing I'm thinking of. So if they're like, George Washington sucks, and then people accidentally write down George Washington.
If they mail it, then
I hope that those people are not being selected as the electors.
Diana cannot be.
No, but I mean, it's an interesting question, and you hope that doesn't happen. By the way, you can see much about the United States by looking at these. 1800. Who had the most electoral votes?
Thomas Jefferson.
they were even.
Electoral
Wait.
votes.
How does it make
Tie. Right? We have a tie between Jefferson and Burr. What do you do? Yeah.
Do you take all the people that didn't vote for him and have them vote?
No, that would be an interesting way of doing it. No, what they do is the House of Representatives gets to decide. Yeah, and they all vote. They get together and vote. And so Jefferson became president this one. Check out this one. This one's a really interesting one. 1824. You'll like this. Who became president? Who got the check mark? John Quincy Adams. Who had the most electoral votes? Who had the most popular votes? Andrew Jackson. In this election, no one got the 51% of the electoral. No one got the majority. There were 4 candidates, and they split electoral votes so much that no one got the majority. And in that situation, the House of Representatives gets to decide. Guess who was the most popular person in the House of Representatives? Adams. You can best believe Jackson was not happy about that. Went on a freaking rampage. The very next year, guess who gets elected? In a landslide. Big old landslide.
Oh, they're going against each other again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah.
That one's so pretty though.
Take it they weren't like best friends.
Yeah.
What does it even say for 2016?
It
On the calendar.
It shows what predictions they think, but they'll change. They always change. Any questions? Do you guys feel like you have a better understanding of this?
Yeah.
All right.
You shouldn't test this.
But why do they call it?
I will. Huh?
Why do they call it a college?
A college of electors, a body of electors. That's what it is.
Why not like a herd of them?
A herd of electors? A gaggle of electors?